Hello, everybody. Welcome to an improvisational show where I do the minimum, but I did set up this green screen. And, first thing I do is check if everything's working. Where I do the That's me coming through the internet, so that's good. Um, at least it means it's working and my audio is all on. Watching the comments again. It's somewhat late, so I wouldn't expect much from that. Um, Welcome to episode 2 of Illusions Exist, because illusions are something that exists, and I know that because you have a lot of them, and so I can see they exist. I'm going to talk about 3 subjects. I'm going to talk about the TMT. This is a little information you might not know what's going on. The TMT, 30-meter telescope in Hawaii. There's this huge protest. I want to talk about the culture war and democracy. That'll be a little meta. And then there's this show on HBO I've been watching years and years. One more episode left. I think it's a 1-season show. So no spoilers. I'll discuss it a little bit, but I won't give any spoilers. But I will talk about sort of the issues that it raises for me. All right. Now, first off, oh, hey, Barklord. First off, the TMT. Now, some of you might remember I worked in astronomy on the Big Island, and this is a telescope. I know several people that are working there, maybe a half dozen. Right off, I'm going to tell you I abstain on the whole issue. The issue is they want to build this 30-meter telescope on the summit of Mauna Kea. Probably the best site in the world for astronomy for various reasons. It's a great site. Also, it's just an hour and a half from international airports. You're kind of out in the boondocks being on the Big Island, but you got airports right down there. It's fairly easy place to get to for somewhere that's like at 13,000 feet. Now there's the problem. They're trying to start building this, and as you see in this one photo down here, uh, there's been protectors protesting building this and blocking the road, maybe not literally, but kind of literally. And anyway, the road's blocked for all intents and purposes to stop construction crews and supplies from going up there to build this 30-meter telescope. So the issue is that Mauna Kea is a sacred site. Hawaiian gods live there and whatnot. Now, historically, it wasn't off limits. They went up there to mine for certain kinds of stones that you don't find very many places, and to do religious rituals and whatnot. It's not a kapu, it's not a taboo spot to go to in the Hawaiian religion. But building these telescopes up there, you know, well, to put it one way, the Sons of Kamehameha at one protest when I was over there, their attitude was, look, we're not saying that you can't build telescopes on the mountain. We're saying that you're answering, or asking rather, the wrong government. In other words, it's part of the Hawaii sovereignty movement, and so there's history in it. And I abstain from whether you should build the telescope up there or not. I honestly don't know. I mean, I have issues with Hawaii personally. Why I don't really want to even go back to the island. I am going to. Um, uh, my father recently passed away. I'm going to go back for you know our own family ceremonies or whatever. our memorials, our reception or whatever. But on a personal level, I could be biased, but it almost feels like Hawaii should just, or the Big Island specifically, should just be, I don't know, left to not just the native Hawaiians, but all the people that want to live in this Hawaiian style way where you really can live off the land and you pick mangoes and you have fish nets and fish pools, and that's probably pretty extreme. Um, but anyway, I abstain from whether it should go there. I mean, I think that it's not actually a danger to the mountain and things like that. I also think that you can't. It's easy to say, hey, This is the here and now. Don't be hung up on history or the history of plantations or things that have changed. And really, it makes perfect sense that they're trying to assert ownership of this island. Um, and focus, with the sovereignty movement, um, and that this mountain is a focus. That it's like, well, the mountain should belong to us, and we should be the ones that you're paying or not. Though at this point, I don't think the people protesting would accept any money for telescopes to go up there, but there's like a dozen already. So it's been a big deal. It's been, I think, a couple weeks now, but my sense of time is off these days. Maybe it's just been a week, and there's been from 1,000, hundreds to 1,000 to 2,000, I think, last Sunday. So my friends that still live over there are split on it. Most of them are against the telescope, but a couple are for it. Um, I abstain, but it's an interesting subject that I think people should be more aware of what the arguments and where they come from and what they're about. There's definitely conspiracy theories on the side of the protectors. That it's a military installation, that it's adaptive optics laser is, can shoot things down from outer space, that it's military, and it doesn't have military applications. As you know, purely useful for astronomy. Of course, it's a 1 billion plus project. So there's a lot of contractors and people that are going to get some money out of it. So it's not a lie to say that it's a big money thing, but it's not exactly what you'd call a for-profit enterprise. Though some people will profit off of it, so fair enough. But anyway, so that's something I've been following. Looking at the comments here before I go to the next subject. Yeah, condolences, thanks. Yeah, it's I'm in the acceptance stage. Oh, I have this thing here. I was supposed to highlight TMT. There we go. Oh, and I also didn't show the TMT picture. Okay. Fuck. Well, this is just episode 2. I mean, we haven't figured it all out yet. So we get rid of this. There. So there's a picture of the telescopes and some of the protesters, and over here, this is where the protesters, they call themselves protectors, all are, and at this intersection, there's a little hunting reserve over here, and then that goes up the mountain, and this road that's horizontal here, that's a saddle road where you can get from Hilo over to Kona, over the mountain. All right. So the next subject is the culture war and democracy. At the end of this, if you guys are still in the comments, I'll go answer questions or discuss things with you in the comments. That's the idea here. Okay, the culture war. Now, this thing that's going on between right and left it's just a bit ridiculous. I mean, online I've complained about, people don't want to man up and um, have the arguments. They say it's all about free speech and engaging, but it's like the Dave Rubin thing or the Stephen Chowder thing, where you know, convince me, and it's all about free speech, but they don't really want to engage with certain people, you know, and parlay the ideas as ideas, which is their whole, you know, line of propaganda. Um, you know, people say that, well, let's just get the ideas out there. Don't try to convert me. You know, don't be a preacher trying to evangelize to me. Let's just, you know, see what's out there. And I personally think if you do that, you can find ways to go forward sometimes. Compatibilities, subtle compatibilities. You can find the um, you know, politics makes strange bedfellows. Sometimes people together, a far right person and a far left person, might both not want to go to war with Iran, and they should work together on that, or at least vote together. Right? It should come out where they're not locked in to where, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong group. I always have to vote against you. And with this, there should be more flexibility. My attitude with the culture war, being 51 and being a punk rock generation, is that, you know, I thought it was just bullshit. It's the culture war is what old people uh, say when they're complaining about the fact that things are changing. You know, like when these comics are talking about how there's no sense of humor in college. I can't get even go do a show on a college. You're a 65-year-old comedian. When I went to college, there wasn't many 65-year-old comedians that could still work on college campuses. There was other places. There's always Vegas, you know. So it's kind of to me, it wasn't really a culture war. Things were falling apart. We were breaking down the walls of traditionalism, because when I was young, you know, it was still obviously a conservative environment. And you know, when in the '90s you start hearing Rush Limbaugh and he's playing rock and roll music, that was weird because the conservatives had stuck with, you know, rock and roll is black people music, you know, all the way up into the 70s and 80s. And you start having some of the younger conservatives adopting part of the culture that had been rejected by the previous generation of conservatives. And this is how conservatives always are. Um, they just automatically adopt. They're like, I can listen to the Rolling Stones. That doesn't make me a liberal. I can listen to the Beatles. That doesn't make me a, you know, a socialist like John Lennon. Um, and so there was sort of this transition, and then in the 80s, as we did flip back into this conservatism and have this rise in conservatism, I never felt that liberalism had won to the point where, geez, you can't even make a joke anymore, and you have to be you know, like political correctness won. But I acknowledge that for younger generations, that on some cultural level, maybe it did win, and people were pressured from the other direction. You know, instead of having a dogma of conservatism, you know, like when I was young, where if you say you're an atheist, people would think you were demonic and something wrong with you and you weren't trustworthy. Even in California, in Colorado, where I was growing up, let alone in the South and whatnot, where the KKK had billboards, you know, in the 70s. Um, so I don't accept that liberalism won. For one thing, political correctness as a dogmatic correctness kind of attitude isn't what I would consider progressive or liberal, you know, in itself, even if there's certain things like, hey, you know, let's not stone to death a guy wearing a dress. Let's just be okay with that. And like now we have, oh, you know, half of the people would say they're okay with it, and half of those really are okay with it. I don't really feel like, you know, like there was some winning of the culture war, and I still kind of feel like saying that worrying about there being a culture war is just being ignorant about cultures changes decade by decade through the dark ages, whatever age you want to name it as, you know, it's evolving, and the whole culture war thing is for people that just can't face that, don't like the way it's changing. So, uh, on the other hand, I don't like the way things are changing sometimes. Like right now, we're definitely going this weird rightward thing. I mean, the culture and people's opinions, when you poll them, is getting more and more liberal. But the government since Reagan has gotten, both the Democrats got more conservative with the DLC and the third way Democrats taking over. And certainly, from Reagan to Bush and to Bush again and now Trump, that's just getting more and more openly, yeah, let's have camps. And, there's kids dying of pneumonia and sepsis basically from not having 20th century healthcare. Not 21st, but not even 20th century. They're just being let to die through pestilence kind of thing. And, we're in a society that thinks the concentration camps, all they know about is the Nazis. Well, no, there's concentration camps, history of concentration camps throughout history, from before the Nazis and continuously up until today. And they don't always become work camps and death camps, but they always become, filthy places that are unhealthy to live and stunt any ability to be a free person, productive in the manner of a free person. So, like that is the culture changing. And so is that a culture war because I don't want it to change in that direction? I still don't see it as a culture war. I think the culture is changing. You're riding it. There's waves to it. And I don't feel like my reaction to that is reactionary because I realize that I believe in democracy, and people seem to misunderstand democracy from the way or understand it differently from how I see it. Democracy, is not about how do we all convince each other so we're all on the same page. Like democracy, I'm a Christian. Oh, I've got to convince everybody to be a Christian, or else democracy fails. No, you got to assume not everybody is going to be a Christian. How do you live in an environment that's it's automatically heterogeneous because it's got 300 plus million people in it, and we're individuals. So even if we were all Christian, we'd all be different denominations, or if we were all the same denomination, we'd have different doctrines and beliefs and directions we were going. So the point of democracy is how do you work with people where you aren't all bossed into the same church where you have to pretend to have the same position on everything. That's the problem we're trying to solve with democracy. And right now it doesn't look like the other side wants to solve that. They think, oh, propaganda, and then our side, left is good. You're just propaganda, and it's like, well, in reality, our differences, they're influenced by propaganda, but it's also true that we do have different fears and desires and wants and priorities, and we need that. We should triangulate from that into what common plan we could do and kind of be reasonable with the fact that we're here with other people. I don't skateboard. I never really was able to pick it up. So I do want skate parks, but if I didn't, it'd be understandable. I don't get anything from them. Nobody in my immediate family skateboards, and so if I was against it and you were for it, then that's fine. We have both of it. Maybe I say we get to have a public pool and you don't want that, and I think that's good. Fact is, I think all of those kinds of things are pretty good, and to me, it's just a matter of cost. But the point is, we need to figure out how to. We're not going to wipe each other out. Now, the culture war, some of our attitudes might fade away into history, and I don't really see the problem with that. I kind of assume that the attitudes I have, many of them, are unique to me and will die with me, but the ones that I share are going to fade away. None of our ideas now are probably going to seem like the hip, smart thing to people 1,000 years from now. I mean, do you go back 1,000 years and decide which of those two groups they both look primitive, right? So, having said that, I guess there is something to this idea of if people are going to take this natural progression of history as an existential crisis and fight it like a war, and possibly people are going to get hurt and killed, then maybe I have to realize it's a little bit more of a war than I wanted to think of. All right. The last thing is years and years. All right, I've been watching the show. I think there's one more episode, and they're not going to make another season, is my understanding. Um, it's very interesting to me. It's the interesting part is just sort of the construction of how it shows. So like the first episode is 5 years, and it's kind of like that. So it's shooting time. It starts I think in September of 2019, right after Trump's reelection, and it shoots ahead in time. It's somewhere around 15 years now. You've got a lot of things based on that, a lot of predictions, sort of. It's a family drama, but then it's set in this speeding ahead, nature of time. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but it creates this timeline of a dystopia, basically. Emma Thompson plays a sort of a right-winger populist British character, and we see her as she enters and goes through politics. It feels very present to some of the things we're dealing with. And in a way, I think you could watch it as a Trumpite Brexiteer and maybe also appreciate it. Though probably not, because even though there's characters that have sympathies and are kind of voting in these ways and down with the system, a leftist that's for this person that's going to bring the system down, and just a regular person that thinks it's funny, and someone else that thinks we need to be nationalist and whatnot, and how it progresses and what it makes. So I don't want to spoil a thing, so I'll stop talking about that. But what it makes me wonder is like there's so many of these who knows what they want to be called at the moment, but these alt-right kind of people, these anti-SJW edgelord types. A lot of them act like they just don't think it's possible, right? Some of them might be like, women shouldn't be allowed to vote. But a lot of them are just like, that's funny, you said that. People are going to be mad because, we lost the culture war, and now people get mad when you say things like that. But they don't actually want to take the vote from women. They think that's impossible, right? They don't want to have concentration camps. They think it's impossible. So as we have them, they're going to cognitive dissonance. Well, it's something different. It's not like the Nazis. It's like, no, it's more like the concentration camps we had in the Philippines, or like the concentration camps they had in Shangri-La, uh, Bhutan. A very peaceful government with not many crimes. People all around the world have dealt with this kind of phenomena, and it's sort of a kind of not just an American exceptionalism, but a Sargon of exceptionism, where they act like it's just not possible for the Nazi kind of thing to happen here. Like that's ancient history, inconceivable. I'm 50, and it's weird when I was a kid and it seemed like World War II was ancient history, because the grandparents and stuff, they didn't go telling a lot of stories unless you pressed them. The ones I knew and my friends, and they acted like they finished war. We got rid of Nazis. No more Nazis. Everybody rejoice. And it's been longer since then than it was from then until World War II. World War II was so present then, so near, really. It's not ancient history, and America maybe hasn't had its full bout of it. Maybe McCarthyism was like an immunization, but it doesn't look like it. And how far does it go? Years and Years, I think, shows kind of a progression, a decent narrative, where it's not a panicky narrative. Like, I don't want to give a spoiler, but, well, I'm going to give one spoiler. So close your ears for a second if you don't want a Years and Years spoiler. But a nuclear bomb goes off in this show. So I'm not saying why. And, a few years later, it's like, oh, nobody's talking about it anymore because it didn't start a global nuclear reaction thing. It was just that place got destroyed and people went on. And this is a funny thing about the sort of fall into chaotic war zones and stuff. I worked once with a Bolivian coworker, and when she was a kid, there was gunfire in the streets, kind of strife in her country, and she became an engineer. They were an upper middle class kind of family, and they were going to go get careers and that kind of thing and go to college. And what happens when people start shooting? And sometimes there's shootings in the street between you and school. You're still going to school. You still have to go grocery shopping. It's not like life stops. You have to get water, and there's a war. It's not like, oh, you stop thinking about making dinner because now there's a war. No, you still have to figure out how to make dinner and stuff. So life goes on. This show kind of shows that and shows a progression. And if we follow a progression like that, you got to wonder how long the people that are just being funny edgelords, how long until they realize. Of course, a problem is if they all realize once it's too late, and once there's not a proper rule of law, or once we have dictatorial presidencies, or we have to suspend elections, or whatever kind of thing, At what point do they realize is an interesting question, but if it's too late, it won't necessarily matter, because what happens is once they institutionalize these right-wing kinds of things, which you have to remember, the American government has people that know a lot about instituting these types of governments because we've done it all over the world, and we didn't even start it. So there's hundreds of years of how do you convert people with an yearning to be free that elect a democratic leader. How do you have a coup and turn that into a right-wing Iran for 50 years? They have ways of doing that, which have been proven to work. So do they want to do that here? We always thought no. But if they do that, once those institutions are in place, then if Sargon realizes, oh my God, I really was serious about being somewhat liberal. I just thought that this wasn't possible. Nobody was racist anymore. I was wrong. It'll be too late, because by that time those institutions will be able to marginalize him as a bitter loser, and they can deal with the people that get disgruntled. And as they do that, a lot of people will go like, well, I just don't even like politics. I'm just going to go do this kind of thing. So I fucking didn't use my highlight. Damn. Is that a good thing to have? See, it was supposed to go down there. Then people could seek and stuff. Oh, well, maybe I'll try that again next time. So in conclusion about that, and I'll go see if anybody is still around with the comments. I have been wondering, if it's time for me. I've always been interested in politics and whatnot, but I've worked in politics and felt, hey, I could make a change, and I've made some little bits of change. Mostly doing politics is just chipping away against a wall. Then you never break through. But there's been some successes and whatnot, and I always felt good, about taking part in it. But it can be an energy drain. Let's just put it that way. It's not always a reward. Like, you spend all the energy to go snow skiing, and you get all the excitement of the snow skiing. You get a payoff. Politics isn't really always like that, or even often like that. But I've never thought like, oh, my involvement is going to make the difference. It's more like my involvement is just, the drops, the the piece of straw in a pile. You're part of this heap, and I care and I'm interested, so you do something. But it is stressful, and I've been thinking I need to pull some of my energy back into myself compared to things that I'm not going to affect. I mean, I follow politics every day. I understand my own position. I understand I differ from other people's position, and I understand that really the majority of the people making the voting decisions are just going to use their intuition, and that's just good enough. We're going to rely on our intuition, and I have no choice, but I'm relying on their intuition too, because I'm just one vote, and they're 50 million to 100 million or of this other style. And I could just focus on the aspects of my life that I've achieved in the manner that I hoped to, and I don't have any $20 million bank account where I can just stop worrying. Who knows what's going to happen as I have to retire and stuff, so I'm not saying I'm not worried. On the other hand, I live in nature, and there's like tons of dragonflies around here, and I can go visit the eagle, and I see my beaver friend, and muskrat friend, and mink friend, and I talked to a daddy longlegs today, and those kinds of things make me really happy. And you wonder at some point at which it's like maybe I should just circle in what I'm really worried about, what I'm really concerned about into the property I live on. Or now, hey, one of those dreams I was mentioned about. I own a piece of property. Of course, I owe the bank, but in some sense, I own it. Um, and it's a lot. It doesn't make me very nervous worrying about protecting my piece of land. If the country goes to fascism, and I literally have to worry just about a band of fascists coming to my land, I think I could handle that, right? I probably wouldn't have to come to blows, and if I did, we'd do that too. Whatever. I mean, I'm not as worried about that's a low possibility, and if it became a high possibility, I'm in the country. It wouldn't be thousands of strangers. There'd be a chance to talk. You know what I mean? It's a terrible situation being in that Anne Frank's downstairs neighbor talking to the Nazis. Um, so you can't escape from everything in my point. But that's much less of a worry than worrying about which of these fools is going to be president and whatnot. And of course, I could still vote and have my opinion on all that. I'm just saying, not spend so much angst. But that would feel like a cop-out, too. Because we, in this public dialogue, I wish there was a way to fix the public dialogue. That's what I'd really like to do. I don't really think there's a software solution, but I wish, if I had won the lottery, I would try to spend some time on a software solution to help fix the public dialogue so that it's productive. I don't care about people's feelings or the stuff where I don't like getting yelled at and stuff like that. I'm not too concerned about that. Oops, look, my camera got knocked on my green screen. I see. Dang. Glitches. Yeah, it feels like a cop-out. I don't want to give up. It feels like if I'm going to go vote and have the opinions, I mean, the opinions, who cares? But if I'm going to go vote, then being involved in the conversation seems important, even though it looks like it's going to be futile for the rest of my lifetime. So, okay, let's see. I don't know if any of these guys are still here, but there's some comments, so I'm going to go ahead and go through them. Barklord was here or is here. And okay, yeah. So some condolences for the fact that I lost my father a couple weeks ago. Testicle Nightmare says you got owned today. No, I don't think so. I didn't hear about that. Well, I guess I just heard about that. But did you mean yesterday? Because it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. That's not possible. There's nobody conversing with me now. I can't get owned if nobody is conversing with me. Sparkloid says, what do you think about the term liberal and libertarianism having changed the United States from the original economic meanings? Um, I think it was a natural split, though I believe maybe it was FDR that took the fork in the road. Um, I think they're not as different as they seem to be. I consider myself a libertarian because I think liberty, as in John Stuart Mill's version of it, with society impinging on it as much or more than the government, and them both being an issue, that kind of liberty is very important. I believe that we don't have liberty in the state of nature because you can measure liberty like by your freedom of movement and whatnot, and having roads and those abilities of a modern human creates liberty. And I think societies, safe societies, create liberty, and that is ultimately what the liberal idea of the term means. Why we need a social infrastructure, and the various things that create safety for people to have freedom of movement and activities. Testicle Nightmare says Trump 2020. I mean, I guess you're saying Trump um, for. I don't think he's going to go to prison in 2020 or at all, probably. Um, Testicle Nightmare. America is not a democracy. It's a republic. Well, it's a democratic republic. It is a democracy. I don't know how you define a democracy, but it is also a republic, and it is, you could say, primarily republic in that there's the rule of law. When people elect someone to be president, for example, it doesn't change the law. The law is the same, and as a republic, they're supposed to be subject to the law. The people to change the law have to vote for legislators, and it takes time, and they have to change the law and have debate and stuff like that. You don't just have, it's not like the people are the king and they could just do anything on a whim. At least that's not how a democratic republic is supposed to be. So this America is not a democracy, it's a republic. I mean, it's allegedly an opinion. I think you don't know what you're saying, because we are a democracy. Most republics are democracies. Um, and a republic comes from the Latin for res publicus, which means things owned by the public. So we are definitely a republic. I'm fine with pointing out that we're a republic. And if you're against democracy, it's just good to know what side you're on. If you could put a little emblem on your shirt, I'm not for democracy, that would be useful. Barklord. Isn't it odd that Trump's supporters are generally in favor of fixing the things that Reagan Thatcher destroyed, yet they believe they're continuing in the Reagan ways? Yes. But it's like with these sticks and hammer types and stuff, where their right-wingedness is making them socialists, because when it comes to something like YouTube, they think that the government should tell it how to operate, but it's like a national kind of socialism where it's selective. Like left-wing businesses should have to give themselves up and let right-wingers control them. Right-wing businesses should have proven their worth to run the thing on their own. On the other hand, I'm not so sure that they aren't Reagan style. Testicle Nightmare. No, put America first. National pride and fundamentals that made this country great. I'm a direct descendant of William Brewster that came over on the Mayflower, and immigration is what made this country great. So you're obviously just of a widely different set of preferences and priorities. Barklord was talking to Testicle. You're not saying anything specific. Testicle Nightmare told him, people who hate America, get out. Well, you get out then. You don't like it the way it is. We have birthright citizenship. We have family unification. We have the ACA. We think that you could fuck off and get another job if you're going to be a racist or grab women in the ass anymore. That's America. You don't like it? Get out, Testicle. Get the fuck out. Oh, except for wait, when refugees want to get out of their country and go to another country, you're all like, they should stay there and just work on making it better. Oh, but we should get out. Why don't you try being consistent, but you're crazy? Okay, you're fucking crazy. You need to get yourself together and try to just be consistent about whether people that need to be refugees and leave a place that they can't stand anymore, whether they should be allowed to leave and go other places. And secure your own border. Secure your face. Your face is a secure border. Trade deals that work for people, not corporations. Yeah, and you're voting for Trump. You are a fucking moron if you think that that's what Trump has been doing. Standing for our anthem. You should look up the proper stance for honoring a fellow fallen soldier. It's on one knee. That's the stance he was using. You're an idiot. You don't study. You don't know anything about patriotism because you watch American Ninja. Oh Jesus, you're a moron. Sorry. Americans first, not non-citizens here illegally. Your face is a non-citizen. Barklord says, who hates America? Testicle Nightmare. Omar, both of the Fantastic Four Dems pushing their agenda and not doing anything for America. Immigrants that come here who hate us and push their culture and fly their homeland flags here. Why did you? It's not just school shootings that can be sourced back to mental health care in this country. Leave your country if it's so great. 2 million Middle Easterns since 9/11 who were planning mass attacks. Oh, jeez. Bowling Green. 2009 Bowling Green. The Bowling Green Massacre. Okay, that's a farce. That was just a fuck up by Kellyanne Conway. Now I don't even think you're serious. You're trolling. Okay, Barklord. Didn't our Constitution allow for evolution? Testicle Nightmare. Who voted for these people to come here? I know not one. Evolution, no breed, rock and alien right from their creator. Ask Sweden how that's working out, how endless refugee to enter citizen here under attack 24/7. He's just a troll. I don't think he's true. Barklord said, you're against freedom. Testicle Nightmare said, yep. He was trolling us. Barklord, does liberty imply a oops? Testicle Nightmare. Ben Franklin, guess you know nothing about forefathers. King Kush, whose symbol is an avocado. We need more jungle streams, pyrrho. Not in the jungle anymore. Testicle Nightmare. Fact. Testicle Nightmare. Public vote wins presidency. Nope. I know. Well, you're against democracy, so you must love that. Barklord. If liberty doesn't exist in nature, does that imply that it's anthropomorphic? I don't know, like grammatically, if anthropomorphic would be the right word, but yeah, it's a man created. It is viewing nature. It is projecting out onto nature a man created, a mankind and woman created a concept. However, I think all animals also do it. You don't need high technology. You don't necessarily need a culture to increase your own liberty, like building a good house that's close to the water and having a big enough garden so that you can leave it, pack food in a pack and take a 100-mile hike. Is something that kind of all animals do just as part of their making a home for themselves sort of thing. So I also think that, it's a natural thing. It's described philosophically and given technical meaning by various philosophers. And So it does, like nature thought of it first, kind of, which is always true. But yeah, it's sort of an anthropomorphic projection onto nature, where there's a society embedded in that nature that's really causing the concept of liberty, because it's not just safety from human beings and crime, but also from animals and disease, and you're on the road and there's a storm, is there a place for you to go get shelter? um, Barklord says, "Gotta run. Have a good night." All right, good night. Probably missed you. Maybe you'll see the end, and I'll say goodbye. Testicle Nightmare. Native American, you get out. Native Nightmare. Okay, I see what you were doing. I see what you were reverse. You're right. Native Americans should get out of their own country and go back to where they came from. You're not serious. Nice try though. All right, thanks, Sam. Thanks for the commenters as well. I enjoy that part. Um, all right, goodbye from the pond.